Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 23.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, with a Golf Improvement Podcast dedicated to bringing you useful information on custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques to take your game to new heights. Well, you can probably tell I have a little bit more voice. I've finally gotten over the cold I've had for a few weeks, and it's going to be fun this week to get to play golf after about 2 weeks of total snow and ice here in Oak Ridge. Usually I discuss a topic before the podcast interview, but this week I'm going to do something a little different because there were some things that came up in the interview with Ben Pellicani from Pelly Golf that I really want to reinforce after you've gotten a chance to hear them. So let's see, how do they say? Without further ado, let's get right on to that interview. Hello, this is Tony Wright with the Golf Improvement Podcast, and I'm really delighted today to talk with Ben Pellicani from Pelly Golf. Ben is a teaching professional and the assistant golf coach at Lipscomb College in Nashville, Tennessee. And I first met Ben about, 3 or 4 weeks ago at the PGA show. He taught a half-day class sponsored by Seymour Putting on putting instruction, and I learned a lot from that, and so I kind of hoped he might share some of his knowledge with the people that listen to my podcast. So, Ben, welcome, and again, thanks for doing this.
Well, Tony, thanks for having me. And the Seymour Advanced Learning was a fun day, and glad you asked me to do this.
Yeah. Well, I always like to let people tell a little bit at the start about their story, how they, and in your case, kind of what motivated you to become a golf instructor, and also to learn a lot about teaching putting.
Yeah, I think I was like a lot of kids growing up, always wanted to play out on tour, and played high school golf and had a decent little career, and was able and have the opportunity to play at the collegiate level. Played Division I college golf at a low level school called Bucknell University, and played there for 4 years. Was able to be fortunate enough to captain the first ever Patriot League championship team for Bucknell, and then decided that I never really wanted to get into the workforce. So I thought I'd get my hand at playing, and got down to Florida and got my butt kicked pretty soundly. And, after that, I said, I just love golf and I love coaching. And so I just found a place to teach and got into the teaching world, and had the fortunate opportunity to work with Mike Bender for 3 years. Worked for him in a capacity that's a little bit different than a typical teacher. I was the head coach and director of his full-time junior development program. So I was able to work with the same group of kids 5 days a week, 4 hours a day, and we spent about 9 months with them. So roughly 800 hours of training with a small group of kids. But my love and passion always was at the collegiate level, and had the opportunity this year to join the staff at Lipscomb University, and I also have to do some teaching on the side as well, and love that side of it as well. But, for me as a player, I was always a good enough ball striker in college, and it's amazing what's happened the last 15 years since I was in college. The level of instruction has just risen so high. And when I was playing, the idea of a putting instructor was almost foreign. And I was a good enough ball striker, but I was a horrible putter, and I think that's kind of where my kind of first fascination to get better and learn what makes a great putter started from me wanting to become better myself, and I think if you listen to a lot of golf instructors, their passion usually lies in where one of their weaknesses were, and as a player, and I just kind of dove head first into it, and was fortunate enough to hook up with Seymour a little bit and learn some things from them and kind of add to what they have, and now I'm kind of here, kind of being able to kind of live out my dream a little bit, being a college coach, and then also work with high level players on their short game and practice planning, and kind of leads me today.
Yeah. Well, you said, and you said the word coach a lot. And, when I look back at your website, I think you make a specific point of being a coach, and more people are talking more about the coaching part as being, I don't know, in some ways more important than teaching. I know we didn't talk about this as a question, and you don't really need to go on with it, but coaching just seems like such an important element of the whole process of helping somebody get better these days.
Well, it is, and coaching's different than teaching. Teaching is what I would define as teaching is a lesson. You come, typically that lesson is going to entail something on the technical spectrum, and that is important. You have to build your technical skill set. You have to have someone there that can help you, go towards your ideal of how to swing or how to putt or how to chip. But coaching is a little bit more in depth. We hear all the time, you should practice like you play. But if I watch most players practice, they don't do anything like they play. And so, there's ways to develop skills. There's ways to transfer those skills. And coaching has to encompass the whole thing. And I always like to use this analogy. There's no one who's ever walked into a Duke basketball practice and told Mike Krzyzewski what they're going to do that day. Coach K runs and is the coach of that program. He has a view of where that program's going, but he also knows how all the pieces go together. And I think if you're a student of the game of golf and you want to find someone to help you improve, you need to find someone that can give you and give you the whole formula. It's not just how to swing a golf club, because there's obviously a lot of great guys out there on how to swing a golf club, but how does that translate to how you play? How do you pick your shots? All of that should go together and be encompassed in the way you practice. So when you do go play, you can say, hey, I've done this 1,000 times, and you can just execute and rely on those repetitions you've done in practice. But if you practice differently than you play, then it's almost not even worth the time to practice, because it's not simulating the way you want to play.
Oh, that's great. I really appreciate you adding that. Now, a couple of things that I know you focus on that I kind of found particularly interesting, and the more I'm talking with different people, I see some of this. Assessing putting skills before identifying improvement tasks. And then you mentioned in the class, talking about Zach Johnson, that he's done the same kinds of things for 12 years. Well, most of us sort of mortals are probably not in that realm. But, the idea of long-term improvement plans for golfers. So can you talk a little bit about these areas and how you approach them?
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to that coaching model. I mean, if you're going to get better at anything, you have to first assess where you are. And there's two ways to kind of assess where we are in golf. We can either use our stats, and now we have these great programs. I love Shot by Shot by Peter Sanders. I think he's done a great job of simplifying ways of inputting stats, but then also how to look at those stats in a way that's useful. So Shot by Shot, but there's a lot of great programs out there as well. But looking at your stats and then looking at an assessment that's standardized. So over time, you can go back and use that as a skill assessment. Because, if you think about putting, there are 4 main areas to putting. We have our technique, our feel, our green reading, and then the mental side. And so we need to have a standardized way of assessing what what we do well and what we could improve to make our stats better. Because at the end of the day, we want to improve our stats, because if we improve our stats, then the results usually follow. So we try to identify strengths and weaknesses, and I think that starts first with giving a standardized assessment, and then using your stats as a way of benchmarking. Okay, are we doing the right things to improve? So I think with anything in your game, be it full swing, wedges, your iron play, your chipping, you have to have ways of saying, okay, here's where we are, here's where we want to get to, and then here's how we're going to bridge that gap and move forward.
Now, how about a little bit too about the sort of long-term plans? Do you sort of create different ones for if you're working with more recreational golfers rather than your college kids? Are there a little bit of differences in those, or how do you attack that?
Yeah, and that's really interesting because, again, I had the fortunate opportunity to be with Mike Bender, and I had a lot of conversations with Mike, like, do we teach people differently? And he said no, and I kind of agree with him. Everyone should be moving towards a certain place. Now, where you are currently and where we want to get to, there might be a vast, wide gap there, but every player is pretty similar in the sense that if their technical skill set gets better and their feel improves and their green reading gets better and they have great routines and mentally approach putting in a great way, then they're going to be moving towards, a quote unquote ideal place. And I think every player is somewhere in that spectrum. Now, some players might be a little further behind, but I had some really neat opportunities to work with Seymour doing what we call cyber coaching. So, I had someone from Hong Kong. I've had I've taught people in Minnesota and Georgia and Texas. And these people I will very probably not, but very rarely ever meet in person. We do everything online. And we use a really neat platform called Edufy. It's kind of like a private Facebook of sorts. But we start with an assessment. We use something that we call a putting card, but basically it's a way of charting our successes on the green. And we just start where they are currently, and then we say, okay, here are the areas that you're the strongest currently. Here are the areas that you're the weakest. So let's get your weaker areas better, and then find ways to build on your strong areas. And I actually have yet to find anyone that doesn't work. Be it a gentleman who's in a halfway around the world, or one of our college players. I mean, it's still where are your strengths, where are your weaknesses, and then identifying how we're going to get better at those. So even the recreational golfer, I found great success using the same formula that I'd use with my mini tour or LPGA or PGA Tour players. And I think the really interesting part about that is most recreational golfers, I ask, how much do you practice putting? And they say, well, I don't practice much. Typically, it's because they don't know what to do. So if you give them a plan, you give them an outline, okay, here's what we're going to do, this is why we're going to do it, and they start seeing some success from it, you'd be amazed at how a person who's never practiced putting falls in love with the process of getting better, mostly because they just are given a plan and given an idea of what to do. I don't know. Maybe I'm different. Maybe I've just been fortunate with students who want to work hard, but I've yet to find anyone who doesn't like to put in time once they're given a plan to get better.
I think that's such a gem of a thought. I'm not sure I ever really heard that, about nobody ever really gets a plan like that. So thanks for sharing that. I know you have a lot of different drills and tasks, and I have to say one of the ones that I really loved in the class was when you talked about practicing 5-foot putts that break, but practice them both ways. Okay, now I don't know if that's one of your favorites, But that one's just really struck me because people aim differently on different kind of putts. But can you talk a little bit about some of the, some of the maybe foundational drills and tasks that you often get people to work on?
Yeah, and again, I'm gonna kind of keep tying it back to the coaching side. The general world we look in when we look is everything's based on stats. So that's what's going to drive us. So if we kind of can divide putting into three categories, or four if you want to call inside 5 feet. But inside 5 feet, there's that area of putting that's pretty technically where we see makes or misses. I mean, it's hard to miss a 3-foot putt if you have good technique. So we look at putting inside of 5 feet. We look from 6 to 12 feet, and the reason we look at that area is now with books like Every Shot Counts, people look more and more into stats. The difference between a good putter and a bad putter typically is their success rate from 6 to 12 feet. So we like to look at that as a specific area. We also like to look from 12 feet to 35 feet because on the PGA Tour, they miss more than they make from those areas. So we have a specific target of what we think a successful putt is from that range, and then from 35 feet and out. The reason 35 feet is important is on the PGA Tour, that's where they average 2.0 strokes, or they start 3 putting more than they 1 putt from outside of 35 feet. So again, what we consider a successful putt from outside of 35 feet is its own little realm. It's kind of like what's successful with a chip is different than what's successful with a 7-iron. And again, we love to use realistic expectations, and we can use tour stats as kind of a way of validating what a realistic expectation is. So all of our drills are going to kind of fit within those categories. Are we looking to build a technical skill set? Typically, we're going to see that mostly in that 5 feet and in area. From 6 to 12 feet, those are kind of our money putts. So one drill we love to do from that area is we call it 5 piles of 5, and I'm not very clever with my names of my drills. So literally you put 5 tees around the hole from varying distances between 6 and 12 feet, and you have to make 3 out of 5 from every tee to pick up that tee. But just like in golf, if we think of the full swing, we never want to have a two-way miss in golf. No one steps up on a tee and wants to have a two-way miss. All the good players talk about eliminating half the golf course. Well, I think the same thing's true in putting. I never want to miss a putt on the low side. If I can eliminate half of those misses, and my miss is obviously we want to make putts, but if my miss is always on the air of too much break, then the way we kind of incorporate that philosophy into our drills, and again, we want to practice like we play, in 5 piles of 5, if you miss one ball on the low side, you have to move on to the next tee. So you might miss the first putt on the low side, then you'd have to move on to the next tee. And again, that's kind of the idea of practicing like we play, incorporating that philosophy. Now, again, if you can go 3 for 5, you can pick up that tee. If you don't go 3 for 5, you have to move on. And you just keep going around until you pick up all the tees. And, I think that's a great drill for every player. I've yet to see anyone in any putting philosophy, be it long putter, arm lock, cross-handed, whatever, who wouldn't benefit from doing that drill. And I actually think if you look back in the PGA Tour archives, almost a year ago, they did a little thing on Zach Johnson. He was actually doing that drill during that PGA Tour Live snippet. So, I think that drill can help a 20 handicap. I think that drill should be done by our college players and even done by the tour guys.
And I also know, one of the things you showed was the 6-foot ring thing, which I really like. I've got one of those in my basement, although the snow has not cleared enough away to really start using it, but for really long putts. But
yeah, we talk about what's a realistic expectation, and if you think of putts outside of 35 feet, if you could put a putt inside 35 feet inside a 6-foot ring or a 3-foot radius or around the hole, then your success rate of two putting is going to be really, really high. I think the tour average is like 99% from inside 3 feet. So if you can put a ball inside of 3 feet from 60, 70 feet away from the hole, you're actually going to be picking up strokes in the strokes gained category. So that 6 foot ring is great. I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah. Well, why don't you talk for a few minutes about, and you've mentioned some different people you've had success with. Talk about a couple of your really, like your best success stories with folks.
Yeah, and I thought that was an interesting question you asked, because to me, I see everything as kind of like the journey and the process to get better. So, I can even think about the kids we work with on our college teams, or, I had a young man I worked with who was from Georgia. We did it through cyber coaching, and it's all the students I've been able to work with. I mean, obviously some are higher profile, and but I think every golfer and every golfer I've had the opportunity to work with has reached this goal, is the sub 30 putt per round goal. I think that's a good kind of starting point. If you're sub 30 putts in a round, I think you'd be amazed at how good your scores are. But, for me, my success comes from getting players to kind of buy into the process. And I'm very process oriented. I really think that this is more of a journey that we go on than a one-off lesson. And that's why I use the word coaching a lot, is, we have a place where we start, and there's a place that we want to get to. And it's really more the journey that we go through. And, I can just say from a little plug from the university side, I mean, our ranking has improved about 80 spots since the beginning of the fall. And part of it has to do with the way we're putting. But again, it's all about, where we started and where we're going forward. And, so for me, the success story is my students buying into the process and knowing that there's a way for them to get better in everything that they do. So it's I guess my successes aren't as easy as saying, this player has won this tournament or this player has done this because they took a putting lesson. It's more they've fallen in love with getting better at putting, and they have a plan. And for those who are committed to that plan, they just continue to improve. And for me, those are the successes.
I got to tell you that I didn't anticipate that kind of an answer, but for people who really buy into, sort of the idea of mindset and improvement, there's just such a beautiful answer, because, you don't have to worry about the numbers if you really fall in love with the process, do you? I mean, that's a gem.
I'll give you an example. And again, I've been fortunate enough to be around some really good players. A couple of Ryder Cups ago, Zach Johnson was playing in a foursomes match, or I'm sorry, a 4-ball match, and it was when Poulter was going off. Poulter birdied 5 straight holes at the end to win that match 1-up, and Zach had a putt on 17 to tie the hole with a birdie, and it was a par 3 over water, and Zach hit it in there about 10 feet, and we asked him, what were you thinking about? The whole gallery's around there. Poulter's going off. He's just made 4 birdies in a row. You guys are just trying to remain all square. And he said, you know what? All I could do at that moment was read the putt to the best of my ability and hit the best putt I could. He goes, if it went in, it went in. He goes, if not, I can't do anything about that. All I can do is go through the process that I do to hit good putts. And he was fortunate enough to make it. They didn't birdie the last. Poulter did. But I think that's just an example of a guy who's really bought in. He says, look, all I can do is control the things that I've done. And if the ball goes in that day, great. If it doesn't, that's kind of golf. And but just knowing that you've done everything you can to get better, I think that's where the joy and the victory should come in.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Ben. Well, at the end here, and this has been a really great interview. I'm looking forward to getting feedback from some of the folks I know who listen to it. Talk about, and I got a sense of what some of the takeaways are, but some of your specific takeaways related to people getting better at putting or anything, I guess, right? I mean, I got a sense about, we're going to talk about process a little bit. We must, right?
Yeah, I think the things that I've taken away from people is, and one of the reasons that I find this really interesting, people talk a lot about how everyone's unique in what they do, and I agree that everyone has their own little unique nuances, but I think at the end of the day there is an ideal goal, and we might never get there. And that's okay. It's okay if we never quite get to that goal. But if we care about people and we kind of love on them and on the way to getting there, at the end we've been better because of it. And I think when I talk about getting kids better, and I'm a pretty technical person. I love numbers. I love stats. But at the end of the day, it's the relationships we form and caring about people and kind of just helping them get better and hopefully enjoy this game that I love. I'm probably one of those rare golf instructors that when I go on vacation, I want to play golf. I love this game, and but golf's just given me that opportunity to kind of care about people and kind of get into life with them a little bit. So just been fortunate enough to do that. And, and guys who want to get better, there's a lot of great instructors out there. And if for some reason you're in a place that's not, I encourage you to look up the cyber coaching part as well. And,
yeah.
We're always here to help people.
Well, Ben, this is, I think it's what I expected. I really was looking forward to doing this with you, and I'll bet the Lipscomb kids are just having a great time with you. I'm sure you're really, like you are in this interview, somebody that really cares about them, but probably also holds their feet to the fire about what things that they're doing, right?
Yeah, it's definitely both ends of that, and the university here is something special. I got a great head coach that I work under, Will Brewer, who's a great man who's helped me kind of make the transition to the college level as well. So I've been fortunate enough to be surrounded by some good people, and from Mike Bender to Cheryl Anderson to now Will Brewer, I've been around some of the best, and maybe it's by accident, maybe it's by design, but I've just been fortunate enough to be around these guys.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your insights today to helping golfers improve their putting. And you want to learn more, and I'll put this in the show notes. Go to www.pelligolf.com. And again, thanks, Ben, for a really great interview. And, the modern world of improvement is a lot more fun, I think, than the old ways of doing it, and you really kind of typify that in terms of your approach. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Take care.
Taking your game to new heights. www.gameimprovementgolf.com.
Ben, I just loved getting to do this interview with you, and there were 3 particular items that I wanted to go back and reinforce for people who are looking to improve their putting. One is the importance of doing an initial assessment of your putting. There are a lot of ways to do this, but finding out what your strengths and weaknesses are in terms of your stroke, in terms of, do you tend to miss short putts? Do you tend to have issues with speed control? All of those things are important, and finding someone who can help you do a great initial assessment of your putting, I think, is one thing that's really important as a first step to getting better and to becoming great. The other thing that really tickled me when I listened to it, and it just hit me, is that your statement that when you have found that when golfers really have a plan to improve, a plan that they can move forward, they start practicing more because they can see that it's going to help them play better. So finding a way to have a good plan that you can follow, that you start getting comfortable with and excited about, I think is an important step to moving toward becoming a great putter. But then the thing that really got me the most, and I was so glad you stuck to your guns. Almost every time when I do a podcast, I ask the interviewee something about success stories. And you didn't answer the way everybody else did. You talked about what's important for you in terms of your coaching success with people is when people follow a process for improvement. Because when you do that, it's going to happen. And worrying about results is not the way to get there. But having a process, doing it and sticking to it and having confidence in it, you're going to see great results. So when you said that, I was just delighted, and I was so glad that you really didn't talk about, well, this guy, now he only has 28 putts around and things. Those things will come if you do the right things. And I think you've got your head on so straight about this, and I really appreciate you saying what you said. So for those of you who are interested in getting more information about Ben Pellicani and Pelli Golf, check the web link in the show notes, but also you can find it at www.pelligolf.com. I am very delighted that I already have the next 5 podcasts scheduled. Some are really, every one of them is a really great topic I think you're going to enjoy. And I'm pleased with the people who have agreed to do these with me. So thanks very much, and I hope all of you will benefit from these. Well, as I say, that's it for today. In 2 weeks, we'll be talking custom club fitting with a good friend, Bert Reich, from Gooder Golf in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. Bert, I know will have some very interesting and valuable things to talk with me and with you about related to custom club fitting and its value for you in playing your best golf. See you then.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com